never thought a simple grocery run would be the moment my entire life cracked open. It was late, past 10, and the supermarket was almost empty. I had stopped on my way home from work, exhausted, grabbing a six-pack and some frozen meals because I knew Betty wouldn't have cooked. She never did anymore. Too busy, too tired, too above it all. And then I saw him, Joshua, her ex, standing in the wine aisle, dressed like a damn catalog model, holding a bottle of something expensive. He didn't notice me at first. I was just another guy in a wrinkled button-down, blending into the background. But I watched him, my stomach twisting. It wasn't just that he was here. It was how he was here, like he belonged, like this was his town, his kingdom. And then I noticed the cart beside him. Greek yogurt, organic granola, that overpriced green juice Betty swore helped her digestive balance. My blood went cold. That wasn't his cart. That was her cart. I should have walked away. I should have left it alone, but something inside me snapped. I grabbed a random bottle of whiskey off the shelf and walked up beside him. Casual, like I was just another late-night shopper. "Nice night for a drink," I said. He glanced at me, barely registering my existence. "Yeah." Then he picked up the green juice. That was it. That was all the confirmation I needed. I let out a low laugh, shaking my head. "Still drinking that crap, huh?" That got his attention. His head snapped toward me, eyes narrowing. "Do I know you?" I smiled. "No, but I know her." The way his expression shifted, panic, recognition, then a smooth attempt to recover, told me everything. I didn't need a private investigator. I didn't need text messages or hidden receipts. Betty wasn't just cheating. She was cheating with him. And judging by the cart, he was comfortable. Domestic, like he had already moved in. I could have punched him right there. I could have made a scene. Instead, I did something worse. I smiled wider, leaned in and said, "Enjoy it while it lasts." Then I walked away, leaving him standing there, gripping that stupid green juice like it could save him. By the time I got home, my hands were steady, my mind clear. Betty was in bed, scrolling through her phone, barely looking up as I walked in. "Oh good, you got groceries," she muttered. "Did you remember my juice?" I set the whiskey on the counter. "Funny thing," I said, "they were all out. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of anger, no, that would have been too easy. What I felt was clarity. The kind of cold, razor-sharp awareness that makes you see the world exactly as it is. Betty had underestimated me. She thought I was just some tired, overworked husband who wouldn't notice the cracks in her story. But I'd noticed. I just hadn't looked until now. The next morning, I played my role perfectly. Kissed her on the cheek before work. Asked about her schedule like nothing had changed. She barely gave me half an answer. Too busy replying to texts with that fake, polite smirk she always wore when she thought she was outmaneuvering someone. At lunch, I called my lawyer. Not for a divorce, not yet. That would be too obvious, too expected. No, I needed something better. Something that would leave her scrambling, blindsided, desperate. "Hypothetically," I said, stirring my coffee, "if I wanted to move assets into a trust without my wife knowing, how complicated would that be?" There was a pause on the other end. Then a chuckle. "You're not the first guy to ask me that, Anthony." By the time I got home that evening, I had a plan. Patient one. A deadly one. Betty was already dressed up, full makeup, perfect hair. She looked stunning as always, but I saw it now, the costume, the careful curation. "Going out?" I asked, setting down my keys. She smiled, but her eyes flicked toward her phone. "Work dinner. Liar. Where at?" She hesitated, just for a second. "The, Belmont Grill. Interesting choice. The same restaurant where I'd seen Joshua shopping the night before." I stepped closer, brushed a hand against her hip, letting her think I was still the same gullible idiot she'd been walking all over. "Have fun, babe." She flashed me a tight smile, grabbed her purse, and left. 30 minutes later, I followed her. I didn't go into the restaurant, no need. I just parked down the street and waited. Sure enough, there she was, sitting across from Joshua, her head tilted just so, laughing at something he said. But it wasn't a normal laugh. It was the real one. The one I hadn't heard in months. Should have hurt. Maybe it would have if I hadn't already checked out. Instead, I just watched, arms crossed, noting every detail. How her hand lingered on his wrist. How his knee brushed against hers under the table. How they leaned in, conspiratorial, a world where I didn't exist. I let them have their moment. I let them enjoy the fantasy. Because soon, very soon, I was going to turn it into a nightmare. The next morning, I woke up before Betty. She was still curled up in bed, breathing softly, looking so innocent it was almost laughable. If I didn't know better, I might have believed it. But I did know better. I got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table scrolling through my phone. Not mindlessly, strategically. I started making a list. Every bill, every account, every asset that was in my name. She had spent years convincing me that merging finances was the smart thing to do, that I should trust her with handling money. I used to think I had control. Now I knew better. By the time she came downstairs, stretching and pretending to be exhausted from her so-called work dinner, I had already sent out 2 emails, one to my lawyer, one to a financial consultant. "Morning," she mumbled, opening the fridge. "Didn't hear you get up." "I was just thinking," I said casually, "about our money." Her hand froze on the fridge handle. "Our money?" she repeated, forcing a laugh. "Since when do you care about that?" There it was, the first real crack in her mask. I shrugged, taking a sip of coffee. "I don't know. Just figured it's time to be a little more proactive." I could see the calculations running behind her eyes, the gears turning. Betty was a manipulator, but she wasn't stupid. She knew something was off. "You're not mad, are you?" she asked, tilting her head just enough to look concerned. "Because I came home late?" I smiled. "Why would I be mad?" She let out a small breath, as if relieved. "Good. Because I was thinking, maybe we should invest in something bigger, something real. What if we moved? Got a new place? Something—" She gave me a sweet smile. "Something that makes us both happy?" I almost laughed. She wasn't even being subtle anymore. She wanted out of this house, the one I had bought. Probably so she could push me into a mortgage with her name on it too. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "You're right. Maybe we should look at our options." Her eyes lit up. She had no idea that I wasn't just moving us. I was moving everything. By the time she kissed me goodbye and left for work, I had a meeting scheduled with a financial advisor. Step 1 was already in motion. By the end of the month, Betty wouldn't have a single dollar left to leech from me, and she wouldn't even see it coming. That night, I started pulling every financial string I had. While Betty was working late again, I sat at my desk, a glass of whiskey in one hand, my laptop open in front of me. Emails, bank accounts, property records, I went through everything. The picture that formed was even worse than I expected. Betty had been bleeding me dry. There were secret credit cards I never knew about, opened in my name but maxed out by her. Luxury purchases, high-end boutiques, spa retreats, tens of thousands of dollars in debt, all conveniently buried under automatic payments I had been making, blind to the fact that she was setting me up for financial ruin. And the best part? She hadn't been stupid about it. She was careful, just subtle enough to avoid big red flags. Never too much spending in one place. A little here, a little there. Enough that, if I had never started looking, I might have just kept trusting her. I had 2 options. Explode, confront her, demand explanations and watch her gaslight me into oblivion. Or stay quiet, plan. I chose the second. I made a call. "Hey Ryan, you still know guys who handle off-the-books asset transfers?" My old college roommate, now a financial consultant, chuckled on the other end. "Anthony, my man, you thinking of ghosting the IRS or screwing over an ex?" I swirled my whiskey. "Neither. Just making sure what's mine stays mine." By the next morning, I had done something that made my heart race in a way I hadn't felt in years. I sold our house. Not technically, not yet, but I moved it into a trust. Private trust. One that Betty had no legal claim to. The mortgage was still being paid. Everything looked normal. But as of that moment, the house she lived in, the one she thought was hers, was completely out of her reach. Now came the fun part. I waited. And sure enough, Betty gave me the opening. That evening, she slid into my lap, wrapping her arms around my shoulders. her voice dripping with just enough sugar to cover the venom underneath. "Baby, I was thinking." She ran her fingers through my hair. "Maybe we should upgrade. A bigger house. Something more us." I played dumb, tilted my head. "What's wrong with this house?" She pouted. "Oh, it's nice, but it's not forever. I was looking at some listings today, and there's this gorgeous place just outside of town. A real upgrade. A real upgrade." I knew exactly what she was doing. She thought I was clueless. She thought she could get me to take out another mortgage, move our joint finances into something bigger, something where she had leverage. I let her keep talking, let her show me the photos of the mansion she was clearly fantasizing about. But I wasn't listening to a single word, because I already knew what she didn't. She wasn't getting a mansion. She was about to lose everything. The moment she showed me the listing, I knew she was in deep. It wasn't just any mansion, it was his, Joshua's. I recognized the address instantly. The sleek modern design, the sprawling backyard with a ridiculous infinity pool. He had bragged about it back when they were together, back when he was rolling in money from his real estate investments. So that was her endgame. She wanted me to buy Joshua's old house, the one he had probably promised her before their relationship imploded. She thought she was playing both of us, dangling me like a backup plan while sniffing around her ex's financial leftovers. I took a slow sip of my drink, keeping my expression neutral. "It's nice. What's the price?" She gave me a look, the kind she used when she was about to manipulate someone into agreeing with her. "A little over $2 million, she said, her voice so casual it almost made me laugh. "But it's a great investment, babe. We could totally afford it." I raised an eyebrow. "We?" Her smile faltered, just for a second. "Well, you know what I mean. You're the numbers guy." Numbers guy. That's what she called me when she needed something. When she wanted me to handle the boring financial details while she played the perfect wife. I leaned forward, setting my glass down with a soft clink. "And tell me, Betty, why this house?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" I gave her a slow, knowing smile. "I mean, there are plenty of nice houses out there. But this one, it's Joshua's, isn't it?" The color drained from her face. She tried to recover, laughing it off. "Oh my God, Anthony, that was forever ago. It's just a coincidence." I cut her off. "Is it?" Silence. For the first time in years, she was on the back foot. She was scrambling, and I enjoyed every damn second of it. She licked her lips, searching for the right lie. "Look, maybe I always liked the house, okay? But that doesn't mean." I stood up. "Betty." She froze. I stepped closer, towering over her now. "How long have you been talking to him?" Her breathing hitched. She knew there was no good answer. Lie and I'd call her bluff. Tell the truth, and she'd admit to everything. So she did what manipulators do best. She played the victim. Her eyes went glassy, voice trembling. "I can't believe you're accusing me of something like this. After everything I do for us. Do you even know how hard I work? How much I sacrifice?" Sacrifice. That word almost made me laugh. Betty hadn't sacrificed a damn thing. She spent my money, lived in my house, paraded around like she was the struggling, overworked wife while she was sneaking around behind my back. And now she wanted to gaslight me into buying her ex's house so she could live out some twisted fantasy while draining me dry. I stared at her, letting the silence stretch. Then I chuckled. A low, quiet sound. She hated that. "What's funny?" she snapped. I shook my head. "Just thinking." She folded her arms. "About what?" I met her gaze, unblinking. "How stupid you think I am." That shut her up. I leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. "I know everything, Betty." Her lips parted, a flicker of panic crossing her face. "You." I straightened, brushing past her, grabbing my keys. "Don't wait up for me." She grabbed my arm, nails digging in. "Where are you going?" I looked down at her hand. Then I smiled. "To start house hunting." I left her standing there, eyes wide, grip loosening. She thought she had me trapped. Thought she had set up the perfect con. She had no idea the walls were already closing in. Because by the time I was done, she wouldn't have a house to stand in at all. I drove straight to my lawyer's office. Not home, not to a bar to drown my frustration. I went straight to the man who could make this entire thing official. "Anthony," he greeted, adjusting his glasses as I walked in. "I assume this isn't a social visit." I dropped into the chair across from him, my voice calm, measured. "How fast can I make my assets legally untouchable?" His eyebrows lifted. "That depends. Are we talking about a prenup in place, offshore accounts, trusts?" "Trust?" I cut in. "Private. One she doesn't even know exists." He studied me for a second. "This about your wife?" I exhaled through my nose, tapping my fingers against the desk. "I want everything under my name moved. Now, my house, my savings, my stocks. Everything." He whistled low. "You're not playing around." "No," I said, leaning forward. "I'm not." By the time I walked out of his office, my assets were already in motion. The house was secured under an irrevocable trust, meaning Betty couldn't touch it even if she threw every lawyer she had at me. My liquid money was being funneled into protected investments, ones she'd never even know existed. It was happening. By the time she realized she was drowning, it would be too late. That night I came home early. Betty was in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, scrolling through her phone, probably texting Joshua. She looked up, feigning surprise. "Wow, home before midnight. Did you finally finish that big project?" I smiled. "Something like that." She smirked. "Good. I was thinking we should seriously talk about this house upgrade. I even made an appointment with a realtor for the weekend." "Oh." I poured myself a drink, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. "That's fast." She shrugged. "Why wait? We need to act before the market shifts." The market. She was still pretending this was about a smart investment, still acting like she was the one making the decisions. I let out a small, amused breath. "What?" she asked, voice sharp. I shook my head. "Nothing. Just thinking. About." I met her gaze, my smile widening. "How much I'm looking forward to moving." That made her beam. She thought she had won. She had no idea I wasn't talking about moving into a new house. I was talking about moving out of hers. 2 days later, I executed the next part of my plan. Step 1. Betty's credit cards stopped working. I made sure of it. The ones tied to my accounts? Closed. The ones she had secretly opened under my name? Frozen and flagged for fraud. Step 2. She got a call from her bank. I made sure my lawyer handled that personally. No screaming matches, no accusations, just a quiet, formal, legally airtight notification that all shared finances were now strictly mine. Step 3. The house mysteriously went off the market. She had no idea what was happening yet, but she was about to find out. And when she did, she'd realize she hadn't just lost control. She'd lost everything. It happened at exactly 3:17 p.m. on a Friday. I was at my office when my phone buzzed. Betty calling. I let it ring. She called again, then again. I smirked, silencing the call, waiting. Less than 10 minutes later, my coworker peered into my office. "Dude, your wife's here. Showtime." I leaned back in my chair as Betty stormed in, heels clicking furiously against the floor. Her face twisted into something between rage and desperation. She didn't even glance at my coworker, just zeroed in on me like a missile locked onto its target. "What the hell is going on?" she hissed, slamming her purse onto my desk. I didn't flinch. "Care to be more specific?" She inhaled sharply, struggling to keep her voice down. "My credit cards are getting declined. The bank is telling me I have no access to our accounts. And the house listing." Her breath hitched. "It's gone." I tilted my head. "That's strange. You were so excited about moving. What happened?" She was shaking now, whether from rage or fear, I wasn't sure. "Maybe both. You did something. You're trying to punish me." I exhaled through my nose, tapping a pen against my desk. "Why would I do that, Betty?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. She knew why. She just didn't know how much I knew. I let the silence stretch, watching her squirm. Then, finally, she did what she always did. She tried to flip the script. Her voice cracked as she grabbed my hand, squeezing it too tightly. "Anthony, I don't know what's going on, but if you're mad at me for something, please just talk to me. You're scaring me." There it was. The innocent, helpless act. The wide, glassy eyes. The trembling lip. If I didn't know better, I might have fallen for it. But I did know better. I let out a quiet chuckle, shaking my head. You should be scared. Her fingers twitched around mine. What? I pulled my hand away, leaning in just enough for her to hear me clearly. Do you think I didn't know? That I wouldn't find out. Her mouth opened, then closed. I stood up, towering over her now, voice calm. You thought you were playing me. Thought I'd just keep paying for everything while you snuck around behind my back. I tilted my head. Tell me, Betty, was it always the plan? To drain me dry before running back to Joshua? Or were you hoping to juggle both of us until you got bored? She went pale. I laughed, shaking my head. It doesn't matter now, because while you were busy scheming, I was busy taking everything back. Her breathing was ragged. No, you. She swallowed hard, straightening, trying to regain control. You can't just. Oh, but I can, I said smoothly. And I did. She lunged forward, gripping my shirt. You can't do this to me, she hissed. I have nothing. I stared down at her, letting the moment settle. Then I whispered, I know. Her breath hitched. Then, for the first time ever, Betty looked truly terrified. She staggered back like I'd hit her. No, she breathed. No, this isn't. This can't be happening. I watched her crumble, arms wrapped around herself, fingers digging into her own skin like she was trying to hold herself together. Then, as expected, she snapped. Her eyes blazed with fury, her voice shaking. You think you've won? She hissed. You think you're so damn smart, Anthony? You have no idea who you're messing with. I smirked. I know exactly who I've been dealing with. That's why I planned for every possible tantrum you'd throw. Her nostrils flared. This is illegal. You can't just steal our money. I repeated, chuckling darkly. Betty, name one thing you contributed. One. Go on. Silence. She opened her mouth, then shut it. We both knew the answer. Her entire lavish lifestyle, the designer clothes, the spa weekends, the first-class trips with her work friends. All of it was on my dime. And now, she was cut off. Her hands clenched into fists. Then, suddenly, she let out a small, forced laugh. You know what? She sneered. Fine. You want to play dirty? Let's play. And just like that, she switched tactics. She smoothed out her dress, plastered on a sickeningly sweet smile, and walked out of my office like nothing happened. Oh, she wasn't done. I knew Betty well enough to know she was about to do something reckless. So I followed her. She drove straight to his house. I parked across the street, watching as she pounded on Joshua's door. When he answered, his face fell. He knew something was wrong. They argued. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't have to. I saw his face drop, her voice rise, her hands gesturing wildly. Then his expression turned to pure panic. She wasn't just angry. She was threatening him. I smirked, pulling out my phone. I had a very interesting email sitting in my drafts. A little something about Joshua's shady real estate deals that I had my lawyer quietly investigate. I hit send. The recipient, the IRS. And just like that, Joshua's life was over, too. Joshua's reaction was immediate. His shoulders stiffened. His head snapped toward Betty. And even from my car, I could see the fear flood his face. He yanked her inside, slamming the door shut. I smirked. Oh, buddy, closing the door won't stop what's coming. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A notification from a news alert I had set up. Breaking, real estate mogul under federal investigation for tax fraud. I let out a quiet chuckle. The IRS didn't play games. And unlike Betty, they weren't easy to manipulate with crocodile tears and empty apologies. I settled back in my seat, sipping my coffee, watching the slow unraveling of their little fantasy. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Then, finally, the front door flew open. Joshua shoved Betty outside, his face twisted in panic and rage. I turned up the volume on my phone, just in time to hear, "You set me up. You crazy, greedy. I didn't know, Joshua. I swear." Betty shrieked, clawing at his arm, trying to get back inside. Joshua wasn't having it. "You lied to me," he spat. "Told me you were done with him. That you weren't gonna." He stopped, as if suddenly realizing something. Betty took a step back, her voice dropping into something syrupy sweet. Baby, please. This is just a misunderstanding. We can fix this. Joshua's expression shifted. Suspicion. Oh, he was finally realizing it. Betty had come running to him because she had nowhere else to go. His head snapped toward the street, scanning wildly, looking for me. He knew. He knew this was me. I smiled, giving him a lazy little wave from my car. His face drained of color. He knew he was done. And Betty? She was standing outside, begging to get inside a house that was about to be seized by the federal government. Joshua slammed the door in her face. Betty screamed. And I put my car in drive, rolled down my window just enough for her to hear as I passed. Tough break, huh? The look on her face, worth every damn second of planning. Betty spun around so fast she nearly tripped. Her manicured nails dug into her palms, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. You, she choked out, her voice shrill with rage. I slowed the car just enough to watch her realization settle in. The panic, the desperation. She was alone. Joshua had locked her out. Her money was gone. Her luxury lifestyle shattered. All she had left was her rage, and even that was useless now. She charged at my car, heels clicking violently against the pavement. You think this is funny, Anthony? She screeched. I tilted my head, pretending to think. Then I grinned. A little. Her face twisted, red with fury. She slammed her hands against my window, her fake diamond ring clinking uselessly against the glass. You ruined me, she shrieked. You're a vindictive little man. I laughed. Actually laughed. Betty, sweetheart, I didn't ruin you. You did that all by yourself. Her hands shook, her breathing erratic. She was realizing in real time that there was no backup plan. Joshua was done for. Her money was gone. Her home? No longer hers. I watched her scramble for control. Then, just as I expected, she switched gears again. She softened her voice, her eyes glistening with forced tears. Baby, please, she whispered. I made a mistake, okay? But we can fix this. I raised an eyebrow. Fix what, exactly? She swallowed hard, her lips trembling. Us, she breathed. There it is. The final move in her manipulative playbook. When all else fails, cry, play the victim, pretend to be repentant. I leaned in, resting my arm on the window frame, lowering my voice just enough to make her lean in closer. Then I smiled. No. Her face crumbled. I let that sink in, let her feel the weight of it. Then I straightened up, my voice cool. You know, Betty, maybe Joshua could afford a mansion. But now, he can't even afford a damn motel room. Her lip quivered. Anthony. I didn't wait for the rest. I rolled up my window, and I drove away. Betty shrank in my rearview mirror, standing alone in the middle of the street, surrounded by absolutely nothing. The next morning, I woke up to 15 missed calls and dozens of texts from Betty. Some were angry, filled with insults and desperate threats. Some were pathetic, begging for another chance. And then there were the ones that made me laugh out loud, her trying to gaslight me into believing this was all my fault. I was just lost, Anthony. You pushed me away. We built a life together. Are you seriously going to throw it away over one mistake? You're acting like a child. Grow up and talk to me. I still love you. There it was. The final, desperate Hail Mary. I set my phone down, stretched, and took a deep, satisfying breath. I felt lighter, not just because I was free from her, but because I had won. Betty wasn't used to losing. She had spent her entire life controlling people, manipulating them, bleeding them dry before discarding them like trash. But this time, she was the one left behind. By noon, I got a text from a mutual friend. Dude, Betty is losing her mind. She's crashing on a friend's couch. Joshua's house is getting seized by the feds. She has nothing. I smirked, sipping my coffee. Good. I didn't block her number. I wanted her to see me thrive. A week later, the divorce papers were served. She didn't even fight it. She couldn't. I had made sure of that. And me? I moved into a sleek new condo, one I paid for in full, no mortgage, no strings. My name and my name alone on every document. One night, I got a final text from her. I miss you. I stared at the message for a moment. Then, with a grin, I typed my response. I don't. And then, I blocked her, because for the first time in years, I was finally free.